trying to read your numbers before we start with this or something. So we did 7 right there. So I get your space in order. Get your space in order with sort of get straightened out over here. Okay. Then it's the number that's but I still don't know what we want to say. It's that's how if you see it the same way we do, and you're in charge. You're in charge. If you're in charge, that means you have a better idea how to stuff things like that than anybody. And I'm more confused about it than anybody about this. But there's 2 articles there about India. I saved that. It's. We talked about it a lot when we were doing this without the red light. We talked about it a lot. Is that something you want us to continue with? I mean, I'm up for all the different things. I'm not having this breakdown or something. I'm up for it. I just want to know, did we get that right as far as the way to approach what's missing? To the extent that we talked about a shareholders movement, that's the thing. That's what's different, right? Because we always say, what could I add to something that's not being said by someone else? Because a lot of these things are being addressed by people my own age or younger. Want to get the information out that's important. That they, whatever it is they feel they need to get out. That's just good how we're using these cameras. Okay. But what we talked about is that I refuse to live in a country that is this advanced and this wealthy, and see something that would and be sort of all the ways in which we're being told about such a thing before we get to your event would indicate that the investor class that all the different sectors that could not just solve this, but that would know it had to be solved because of the human toll, the fact that the planet is dying that's the main thing, but also the harm it's going to cause quite frankly, if someone were to look at it and want to know what the dollars and cents destroy so many industries. There'll be no more industry in some sense. So it harms so many different things, and it would indicate that we're all going to die together. We're all going to die together. That's what's going to happen because it's planetary. The fact that it affects its negative effects, that they're happening so fast. But we refuse to accept that it makes any sense that all one can do is to raise awareness. I also reject the proposition put into that film, which I understand was meant for younger people, but the proposition that what explains certain things is that under corporate law, what's called a corporation, though. Hold on, time out. Putting that word on hold for a minute. A corporation is legally bound to serve the interest of the shareholders. Time out. That we mentioned before, those who own shares in such a entity, number one, and the money managers who they may be big investors are here working with a money manager. Their research indicates how the stock of different corporations are doing. The investor class gets a quarterly report. There'd be no reason to assume that it would be worth looking into the practices or methods of the industry. That is, it's not something that would come up, but the last thing but why wouldn't it come up? Well, one reason it wouldn't come to mind, what are the practices of the industry, is that if you assumed it was a corporation, if you assumed it was a regular corporation, that is, why would you want to know what their practices are, how they're doing things? Yes, there's such a thing as this is not the kind of thing that, often people know that there's some kind of social cost to, let's say, manufacturing in an area where people pay very little and it's a repressive area. But there are people who, for whatever their reason, don't find that, they think someone's working on that. But this is different. It was when you have an entity that shareholders are putting money into, that they are unaware is unlike any capital formation that's ever existed in our society before, and that while we're making videos about a positive, this dynamic state sector that's been shut down and could be working to build a whole economy to help everyone, stop with this disintegrating economy. But wait a minute, that no one would suspect, any of the shareholders, the money managers who look at how stocks go up, they're unaware that the way in which it's operating There has never been any capital formation like this in our country, and there never should be. It's deeply integrated into the state. It's subsidized with millions of tax dollars. But it's in its own way. It's as though it's part of the state. But what it's doing, particularly in a place like India, is the way in which they're doing their model of doing their business is depleting the world's water resources. They are using 70% of the water so fast that the Earth's hydrological cycle can't replace it. Its immediate effects over the last 30 years, millions and millions and millions of people no longer have water to drink, to the point where they're petitioning. But there are people here who are activists. Seems like a petition to the UN to make water a human right. It came so fast. It's in the industrialized world already. Michigan is having severe water shortages. We are too. But the idea that if made, all we can do is make people aware that there's no one, international lawyers, corporate lawyers, the shareholders themselves, anyway, the universities, that this is something that you can only raise awareness about. There should, by the way, part of the reason to get all kinds of sectors involved in looking into it and stopping it is there should never be capital formations like this one. The state is working intensely with it to drive down prices, and the way they're doing business is going to cause the death of the planet and all of us. And it's happening that fast, and all we can do is raise awareness about it with people who can't do anything. They can protest, but that's that it can't be stopped. And like I said, we could stop it and force them to restructure, and the state could bail out the restructuring. But something has to take place. The death toll in India, the death toll in other countries, it's affecting, and the fact that the solutions, there really are no solutions. So corporations have stepped in who can sort of manage it. But there's no way to manage mass death from thirst, and also long term, we're all going to die together. You can live without food, you can't live without water. It's very hard to know why all the different sectors and all the different universities, this is not something they can stop. Corporate lawyers, international lawyers, they're not aware of how you put a stop to this immediately. Something's wrong.